It was a calm morning, one of those where the world feels like it's just waking up, but little did I know, things were about to get real messy. I was in the middle of a sip of burnt coffee when I saw the SUV parked right in front of my yard. Now this was strange because no one used the main entrance to my workshop. Truckers, delivery drivers, they all knew the side lot was the way to go. So, I walk over to the intercom, and there's this woman staring into the camera. I didn't recognize her, but she had that air about her, too polished for my liking, especially with the two others behind her. They looked like they belonged to a certain type of club. One with a clipboard, and the other holding a tablet, both looking at me like I was the problem. "Hello, Mr. Rowe," she says, her voice sweet, too sweet. "I'm Nancy Greaves, president of Summit Groves HOA, and we need to talk about your property." I blinked, unsure what the hell she was on about. "What about my property?" I asked, my voice low, just trying to keep the situation simple. She goes on, smiling like a wolf in a cashmere sweater, explaining how my yard, this industrial space I had for years, didn't align with the HOA's standards. Apparently, the flag I had just hoisted, 25 feet high, full of pride and patriotism, and the polished aluminum sign on the front of my workshop, were a violation. It wasn't just that either. The entire visual impact of the place was an eyesore for their community. I was stunned. Visual impact? I muttered under my breath, but she didn't let me finish. She was too busy getting into how they could help me get my place up to code. "No," I said, cutting her off. "This yard isn't even part of your subdivision. It's industrial land. I've had grandfathered zoning exemption since Clinton's first term. I don't need any HOA telling me what to do." Nancy didn't like that. Not one bit. Her fake smile dropped, but she quickly hid it with a deep breath. She kept talking, pushing papers in front of the gate, trying to offer a so-called voluntary annexation into their HOA. But I wasn't buying any of it. I told her no again and threatened legal action if anyone stepped foot on my land without my say-so. But this was only the beginning of what I didn't know would be a full-blown war. A few weeks passed, and I thought everything was fine. But that call came while I was out at a supplier expo in Las Vegas. Just after 8 in the morning, a video feed from my yard popped up. I saw it. 3 people, dressed in neon vests, walking straight into my workshop. One of them had bolt cutters hanging from his belt. I froze. I was miles away, but I had to act fast. By the time I got back to Reno, I had already called Officer Raines, a sheriff's deputy I knew from the area. I had footage. I had proof that someone was breaking into my property, and I wasn't going to let it slide. When I got to the yard, the damage was obvious. The gate was cut, the side personnel door was broken into, and equipment was marked. Not only had they trespassed, but they had even taken photos of my property. I was livid. Sheriff Raines showed up, and I walked him through everything. My earlier run-in with Nancy and her HOA, the packet they'd left behind, the threats. Then we found it. The document they left with my equipment was a forged county inspector's notice. I knew it was fake. I'd worked for the Federal Occupational Safety Bureau for 8 years. This wasn't legit. This was a straight-up crime. I didn't waste time. I forwarded the video footage to the DA's office and got everything on record. By the end of the day, my property was an active crime scene. But the fight wasn't over yet. Nancy and her HOA filed a complaint against me, claiming that I was the one causing harm to the community. Their narrative? I was the aggressor. They tried to paint me as the villain, a threat to their perfect suburban image. I wasn't having it. I met with attorney Bryce Landon, a bulldog litigator, and we were ready to go to war. We countersued them for harassment, defamation, and more. This wasn't just a zoning dispute anymore. It was bigger. It was about the way these HOA bullies operated. What followed was a legal battle that made my blood boil. Their tactics? Dirty. They tried everything to outlast me, flooding me with paperwork, trying to drown me in legalese. But I wasn't backing down. That's when we hit the jackpot. We found emails from Nancy and her HOA team outlining plans to target people like me, small business owners, and coerce them into joining their HOA through threats and false inspections. They had been running an extortion racket, plain and simple. The dominoes started to fall fast after that. Melissa, a former HOA board member, came forward, bringing with her a stash of documents that showed just how deep this scheme went. Suddenly, more victims came out of the woodwork. Carl, another local business owner, shared his story. He'd been harassed by the same HOA, and had even been forced to sign their ridiculous agreement just to avoid constant fines. It was clear now. Nancy and her HOA weren't just out of line. They were a criminal enterprise. By the time the media caught wind of it, things got ugly for Nancy. The press picked up the story, painting her as the villain of a scandalous HOA shakedown. Public opinion shifted. The HOA crumbled. Nancy was arrested. She was going down for multiple crimes, including forgery, fraud, and criminal trespassing. It didn't stop there. The Nevada Attorney General's office launched a full investigation into Summit Grove's HOA. The operation was a mess, a house of cards that came crashing down. Nancy Greaves was officially named as the primary target of a criminal probe. It was over for her. I could hardly believe it when I saw her being arrested on TV, handcuffed in a floral robe, screaming about justice as they escorted her out of her house. The trial didn't last long. With the mountain of evidence stacked against her, the jury convicted her on all counts. She got 12 years in prison. And you know what? I stood there in front of my shop, watching the news vans roll away, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The town started to rebuild. People took down their HOA decals, and some even apologized for supporting the system that nearly ruined me. The once deadlocked community found new life without the grip of the HOA. For me, it was just another day of work. But it wasn't just about the victory over Nancy or the HOA. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my peace, my work. And that was priceless. So as I took a photo of the new private industrial zone sign on my shop that day, I couldn't help but smile. This land was clean, and it was going to stay that way.